Ever get stuck wondering what makes something the right thing to do? Or how do we even know what's true? I mean, these are some seriously big questions, right? Well, it turns out two major philosophies offer some really practical answers. So, let's dive into utilitarianism and pragmatism. Think of them as guidebooks for figuring out what actually, works.
All right, let's start with that first monster question. What really makes an action good? On the surface, it sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? But as soon as you start thinking about your own life, you realize, yeah, it gets complicated, and it gets complicated fast. I mean, think about it. Is taking care of your own health a good action? Totally. But what about spending time on your appearance or helping your company be more profitable? Is that good? What about just enjoying yourself, dedicating time to your own pleasure? How does that stack up against, say, caring for the planet or something as simple as helping someone cross the street? All of a sudden, that one simple question is a whole tangled mess.
Okay, so here comes our first big idea to help us untangle this: utilitarianism. Now, this philosophy popped up in England right in the middle of all the smoke and chaos of the Industrial Revolution, and it offered a completely new, kind of radical way to think about morality. The idea is simple: an action is good if it leads to the greatest amount of good, or happiness, or pleasure for the greatest number of people. For a utilitarian, the only thing that matters, the only thing, is the result.
And if you remember one thing about it, it's this phrase: the greatest good for the greatest number. That's it. That's the core. It became this incredible rallying cry because it totally shifted the focus. It stopped being about your personal good intentions and started being all about the well-being of the whole group.
And the guy who started all this, Jeremy Bentham, he was a character. He wasn't just some philosopher sitting in a comfy chair. No, he was a full-on social reformer. And he was so dedicated to his ideas that, and you gotta hear this, his preserved body is still officially present at board meetings at University College London, which he helped found. Seriously, he wanted to be there forever as a reminder. Now that is commitment.
So, here's the revolutionary change he brought to the table. See, before Bentham, people usually judged an action based on the intention behind it. Did you mean well? But Bentham looked at the legal system and saw that this just wasn't working. It didn't care about the real harm people were suffering. So he said, forget intentions, let's look at the consequences. Did it cause more good than bad for the most people? That's it. That's the only question we should be asking.
And this, of course, completely changes how we think about personal freedom. There's this great saying from that time that just nails it. Your liberty to swing your arm ends where my nose begins. It's perfect, right? It means, yeah, your freedom is super important, but it stops the second it starts harming everyone else. And that one simple idea? It's the bedrock of so many of our laws today.
Okay, but wait a minute. If everything is about the outcome, how do we know what's actually going to work? How can we be sure that what we're doing will lead to the greatest good? I mean, how do we figure out what's even true in the first place? And that question, well, that leads us right into our second huge philosophical idea.
So while all that was happening in England, a new way of thinking was brewing over in America. And it was all about answering that exact question. It's called pragmatism. And here's the deal. Pragmatists say that knowledge isn't some mysterious, abstract thing floating out there for us to find. Nope, it's a tool, something we build. The truth of an idea isn't about how logical it sounds. It's about its real-world practical effects. The bottom line is always, does it work?
And this was another huge change in how people thought. The old school view was that we're basically just spectators, watching the world go by, trying to figure out its deep, unchangeable truths. Pragmatism comes along and says, no way. It completely flips the script. We're not spectators. We are participants. We get our hands dirty, we interact with the world, and it's through that doing that we actually create knowledge.
Let me give you a super simple example. Think about crossing a busy street. You don't stop and pull out a calculator to figure out the physics of an oncoming car, right? Of course not. You just know when to go. That's practical knowledge you've gained from doing it, hopefully successfully, again and again. That gut feeling, that hands-on understanding, that's pure pragmatism right there.
One of the pioneers of this idea, a philosopher named Charles Sanders Peirce, broke it down into a really simple process. He said we build knowledge through trial and error. It's a cycle. You try something, you fail, you learn from it. Then you try again, but differently. It's not about being perfect from the start. It's all about being resilient and learning as you go.
And this is where it starts to look really familiar. Another major pragmatist, John Dewey, took this idea and applied it directly to education. You've definitely heard his famous phrase, learning by doing.
Dewey basically realized that this whole process is just the scientific method, but for everything in life. You see a problem, you figure out what it is, you think of some ways to fix it, you try them out, and boom, you solve it. This literally transformed the classroom from a place where you just sit and listen to a lab where you get to actively figure things out.
So what's the big takeaway here? Why do these old philosophies matter now? Well, because once you see them, you realize they are absolutely everywhere. That utilitarian idea of the greatest good? It's the thinking behind our public healthcare systems, social welfare programs, and a ton of our laws. And that pragmatic, let's see what works spirit? That's the engine driving everything from how we teach our kids, to the scientific method, to pretty much all the tech and innovation that shapes our modern world. So I want to leave you with this one last thought, and it comes from another great pragmatist, William James. Not that long ago, a little over a century, the idea of people flying through the air was, well, it was completely absurd, impossible. And now? Now we get annoyed when our flight is delayed. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What idea seems totally impossible to us right now that will just be everyday common sense for our grandkids?